Can everybody see my screen? I just activated screen share. You should be able to see the title of the slide or the deck. Vivek, are you able to see the screen?
Yes, it is visible.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Once I activate my screen share, I don't see the recording. I'm assuming that's on now.
Yes, it's all good.
Okay, great. So thank you, Vivek, and thanks to this really large and impressive community. I have a quick intro slide, but what I want to preface this is, as Vivek mentioned, this is a new theme that we are bringing to this community. You have seen a lot of very, very technically astute presentations in several of the webinars in the past. This will be a slide, or more than a slide. This would be a change from that. Hopefully, you would like the change. And so, with that, let me go into the brief agenda. And this is the theme here is about AI opportunities from both perspectives, from a business standpoint in terms of AI talent requirements, and then, of course, from the career opportunities that it may present for the talent itself. And so I'll have a brief introduction, some key questions that we all should be asking ourselves, a global demand-supply view, and then what I call as an AI roadmap, which is something that businesses ought to be thinking about, and then a similar roadmap for talent, but with a different lens, a view of AI skills by role, and then what are some of the approaches to tap into for AI job opportunities. And this, as we go along, this is interactive, so please feel free to raise any questions. And Vivek, if I may request you, because in screen sharing I may not see the flags or questions, you please, if there are any flags that are raised, do jump in.
Yes, sure.
So brief introduction about myself and the company. LiterAIture is an AI solutions company, and one of the solutions that we are offering is on the recruiting front. What we realized is, as we were working with clients, besides the need for developing solutions, they need AI talent, and so that was sort of a natural extension. My background is in life sciences, so in terms of a domain, I've been in that space and done a number of corporate and consulting roles in Fortune 500 as well as smaller companies and startup. And Vivek, as you know, I don't need any introduction for Vivek, and we do have a global footprint. So let me jump into the first view, which is the demand-supply gap in AI talent. And you'll see, this is kind of, this is a current snapshot view across the key markets. US, as we would expect, has the highest demand as well as the highest gap. In fact, by some numbers, I'd seen that it's more than 75%, but this is the latest. India is not too far behind. China is also 50 plus, and then you have UK. The UK demand profile is not that high, but the gap still exists. And then in EU, I think EU is low, mainly because the demand there has not grown to the same extent as the other markets. So the key takeaway is the gap is huge. More than half of the roles are not finding sufficient talent. And the other part of the gap is the skill gap in the existing employees. That's even bigger. So if they tap into an existing employee pool and look for whether they are skilled enough to take on these new roles, they're finding that 80% or more than 80% are not. And that is a driver to bring on new talent, right? Because even though they may have an existing pool, they are not skilled for these new kinds of roles. I think the gap being high should not come as a surprise, but some of the numerics on this gap would be definitely more informative. Now, when we look at AI adoptions, what are some of the key questions? AI is kind of in the air; it's everywhere. But we should be a little more deliberate, especially when businesses are looking at what should be my AI strategy, where should I invest? And the first question is, I always like to start with the why. Why should I consider AI in my business? There are many businesses where AI may not have any direct relevance, at least right now. But the why is important. And once you start thinking about the why, then a natural next question is the what. What is the type of AI best suited? Now, some companies can easily work with existing platforms like a chat GPT or any other publicly available platform and get their needs served. If they need to create a marketing message or something which is fairly straightforward, there are many tools available. So knowing the what, and is that what something that is readily available, or do I need to build an in-house capability for the what? And some of the questions there would be, what kind of information am I, what kind of answers am I looking? What is the data that supports the answer? Is the data proprietary? Is the data large enough in volume? If it is something that I am doing in-house. So those are some of the questions around the what. Once you have thought through the what, then naturally it's the how. How can I build or apply, if there is an existing tool already available, how can I apply it for my business need? And as you start thinking through that, you will start thinking about, when do I make that decision, and what is the commitment that I need towards the decision. So there's naturally a budget element here. If you're using third party or not even open source, but readily available solutions, then maybe that's not a big commitment. But if you have to build a custom solution, then that commitment level goes up. And then if you have to hire talent, that's even a bigger commitment. So those are some of the key questions. Again, you've seen that this is not going into any bit of the technology yet, but this is really to think through, how do we approach the question on, is AI relevant, useful, and what is the impact for me? Let me stop here and see if there are any questions. Okay, so now it's the roadmap, and you'll see the two pieces of the roadmap. One is for enterprises, and then the other one is for talent. And I'm assuming this group has a larger portion of the talent, but there might be some enterprise level folks who may be thinking about, how do I start my AI journey, or how do I make it even better? You may have started the journey, but what can I do to make it better? And so the AI roadmap, we put this in 5 phases. And the first phase is very intuitive. Just explore, be curious. If there is a lot of talk about AI now, but I think we've been using AI for a while. It's just subconsciously. If I go back, this is almost 10 years ago, when Google Maps went from pure directions to time predictions, right? There was AI in the background when you started looking at those blue and yellow and red signs. And I forget the exact timing, but this was probably 2014 or 15. So roughly 10 years ago, we started adopting it in a very subconscious way. And today, if you were to go back to the old way, which is an uncolored Google map, you wouldn't want to use it, right? So it's gone to the point where it's very organic to us. Similar thing with Facebook image tags, right? But those were the early days, and the adoption was happening before even some of these terminologies were in place. So that's exploration. If you see that this is interesting, exciting, you would get into the evaluate phase. Now, this is naturally getting into what are the use cases? How can this be applied to my business? And a key question there is will this use case involve business sensitive information? Because if it does, then you are going to shortlist your options a lot more effectively. So for example, going back to if you want to just craft a simple email or a marketing message, there are many public tools. If you want to mine through your own content that resides within the company, then this is your proprietary information. And so you may have to think through the choices of evaluation more carefully. Once you've gone through the evaluate phase and you have now understood what would be some of these use cases, then you have to start thinking about engagement. And the initial set of engagements could be through third-party consultants or any other avenue, because you may not be sure about the extent of these engagements, the extent of commitment, and the extent of value that you might create. So you are really you are bringing the application, but with a limited duration, limited commitments, and naturally a limited cost requirement from your side. The next phase is now, if you see that this is going to be a long-term need, there is enough long-term value, and I need to do this in a sustainable way, you then get into the employee phase. And then that's clearly when you start looking at making hiring decisions, making long-term commitments. There would be investments needed to support those commitments and so on. And with the gap that you saw in the previous slides, you'll have to allocate sufficient time because this gap is real. And so if you want to find the right talent, you will need to allow that amount of runway to get that talent. And then the effectiveness part is, if you have hired and you are beginning to implement it, you naturally need to see what is the effectiveness, what is the value creation, and it would be very useful to develop those effectiveness measures proactively, even when you are making those employee decisions. That in 6 months' time, I need to be able to measure X or Y, maybe in 12 months, things like that. So this is effectively what this roadmap would look like, visually. You have a value dimension, and then you have the effort and investment dimension. And naturally in the early stages, when you're exploring, when you're in the evaluation phase, the effort is low, but the value creation would be limited as well. And what we see is the engage phase is where the value really starts picking up. And hopefully you could see an exponential gain when we get into the employee phase. But naturally, it also means that you are making a sizable investment commitment at that point. The question becomes, does the company know where they are in this roadmap and where they want to be? not everybody may want to go through the full spectrum of the roadmap. There might be some who will just say, evaluate or perhaps engage is good enough. Others might say, I need to think about long-term commitments to employment. Now, a similar roadmap has to be thought through for talent. The explore part is a common theme. I like to quote Steve Jobs' famous, stay hungry, stay foolish. Well, he used the word foolish, but it was, it was done in a provocative way, because it was really about knowing and acknowledging that you don't know, and then that drives your curiosity on and exploring it. And so that's a common theme both for talent as well as the businesses that you saw in the previous slide. But now the diversion starts. If you like what you explore, if you want to be in that space, you naturally need to educate yourself. And this group, this community is doing that very actively. You have many webinars, and that's part of the educate, and it also gets into the enhance phase, because you hopefully will see what are some of the areas where the education that you get will help you enhance the work you do and develop into a clear value proposition. That value proposition then has to be expressed effectively. Through various channels. You have your social media channel, you have CVs, but what we see is CVs have a lot of the tools, the skills. What we see, not very effectively in CVs is how did that translate into value? So employers clearly, the tools are a necessary component, but they are not sufficient. And that's where you need to think about, how do you convey the value proposition, even if it is in a limited way. We all recognize that, those in the AI field are, may not have decades of experience. There might be some who are very prolific in that space, and who may have that, but most don't, and that's recognizable. But with the experience that you've gathered, what is the translation of that experience into value? And effectively, we are all selling our skills, and you have to see yourself as your own best salesman or saleswoman. And that expression requires some careful thinking. And then hopefully through all of that, you get hired in the roles that meet your career aspirations. And so if you go back to the same roadmap, you are now looking at, this is a similar view, but it's the x-axis is now skill development. It naturally is about effort, but it's also a bit of the conveying that skill in an effective way. And so that is something that you need to ask yourself, where am I in this roadmap? This community is clearly probably has crossed the educate, or in that educate and enhance mode. Are you expressing that effectively in what you put out on LinkedIn or in other platforms, and of course in your CVs as well? So those are that is what I call as at least knowing who you are and where you are in this roadmap. Any questions?
So friends, yeah, let's make it interactive. Share your piece of expertise or your thoughts, or feel free to ask any questions you might have.
Okay, so this is now a view of the AI skills, and this is just taking a snapshot of the different kinds of roles. And again, this is not a very comprehensive view, but this at least gets you to think about, what are the skill sets, what are the kinds of roles that I want to position myself, and what are the kinds of skills that I need to have to be eligible, be qualified, and be differentiated for those roles. Prompt engineer is something that we have heard about. We kind of do this subconsciously, but there is a professional role for a prompt engineer. A key requirement for that prompt engineer is to have some contextual knowledge, which naturally means they need to be well versed on the subject matter. Because that contextual knowledge helps them to refine and tune the prompts that they will apply to any models that they're working on. It could be, through a third party, or this could be in-house, but that knowledge of what is the right prompt, in fact, there are views now that you need to be very good on the language side of things as well. And I'm not talking about language from a model, from an LLM standpoint, but just how you frame a question. The language of framing a question, and so that is something that becomes very important. The understanding of LLMs is naturally a given, and you'll see that that's a common theme across all of the different roles. Because that helps you know what to expect when a prompt is given. So that's one area, and you'll see that you don't need to have very good developer skills in the prompt engineering space, because you are you can play the end-to-end role, but the key part is a model is in place or it is being built, and the prompt engineering piece doesn't require you to build the nuts and bolts of the model, but know how to make the best use of it. Then we get into the roll up your sleeves and do the development and the actual creation of AI tools, and that can be segmented into three areas: the architect, the developer, and the ops person. And again, the requirement varies. The requirement of LLM is a common theme there, and this is multimodal. So the language piece in the LLM is a bit misplaced now, because you're now getting into image, voice, and other modalities with the same LLM tools. So you'll need to go beyond just text-based understanding of these LLMs. But the architect is naturally a solution guy or gal. And they need to have a good understanding of the full stack. The developer will need to have the full stack knowledge, but also get into how do you do the actual model development, training and tuning, and all of the other things. And you are subject matter experts in that space. And then last but surely not the least is the ops. And there are schools of thought about, well, if I'm a DevOps, does that automatically make me ready for MLOps? To a certain extent, yes, but MLOps has a number of other emerging areas that you will need to that you'll need to get skilled at. CI/CD, I would say, is a very common thing between DevOps and MLOps, but there are some some more targeted tools that are purely linked to model building and deployment and maintenance. Part of the maintenance would be the ongoing learning that will help you, refine and update these models. So that will all come under the MLOps space. What you'll see is a lot of roles are, use a generic AI engineer kind of title, and that is effectively combining, all of these skills. Now, as you look at the job description, you might see that it's more heavy on the development side or the ops side. Maybe the architecting is fairly straightforward and things like that. So you can position yourself based on the skill base and the alignment it has with your career track. This is just a current snapshot view of the open positions by role. And what I did is, and this is a few days old, but on LinkedIn, and this is something that we all can do very easily. But you go in and type the keyword and look at the count. And I looked at India and US for two reasons. One is these are the markets where you have the biggest gap, but it could also help you understand what are the types of roles that are more in demand in one market versus another. So the keyword hit was pretty high, and it's kind of off this chart. But there is clearly a difference in the count, where US was roughly 5x or maybe closer to 6x of what you see in India. Now, the numbers in India are still, sizable, and so it tells you that this is a growing area. What you see is the predominant profiles in both markets. The numbers are different, but the predominant profiles are for the engineer and ops roles. The engineer roles, there may be overlaps here too. So these may not be mutually exclusive, but they are the largest portion. If you then go to the AI architect, it's a much smaller number. And prompt engineering is one area where we see a significant difference, even knowing that the ratio of India to US is, let's say, 1:5. In the US, there are a lot more prompt engineering roles. And that could be a reflection of the business adoption. So, because prompt engineering needs contextual knowledge, the businesses that are adopting AI, it could be a larger pool in the US that need that contextual knowledge. And so what we saw is there is almost 100x difference. The prompt engineering roles in India were less than 100, or actually they were actually less than 50. And in the US, we are getting up close to 2,000. So maybe not 100x, but 20 to 50x, which is still sizable. So, the contextual applications are not yet on the radar in India, or the contextual usage, but it will get there. As we see more business adoption, I'm sure you would have run across a number of articles where big corporations in India are looking for, they've always done an AI first mindset. And that is going to lead to a growth in the need for prompt engineers. Questions?
Hi, Sunil. Actually, I just need some clarity on what the difference when it comes to AI architect and AI developer on the part of the previous slide, actually.
Yeah. So I would put it as in simple terms, it's the difference of the what versus the how. The architect, and think about, I'm using a more physical analogy. right? When a house is being built, the architect is naturally creating the design of the house, and what are some of the different pieces that will be needed. So the overall design, which is kind of your solution view. It does have a full stack component, but the how, in that solution, if you need a model building, the architect may know the kinds of models that may be relevant, but the actual building of that, the whole process of the training, the testing, all of the nuts and bolts that go into building. If you are, if you're doing organic building, if you're not, if you're just doing fine tuning, that does also have some development requirements. The architect may not be required to know the nuts and bolts, but she or he would need to know how to build the solution which is needed to meet the purpose of the use case. So think about the comparison I would put is, again, using the house. The architect is designing it, but the civil engineer is still needed to create the blueprint, or maybe more than a blueprint, to create, the structural elements of the house. Now, in the AI space, those distinctions are not very, I would say, they are not very well defined. And hence, this is probably one of the reasons why the architect roles are in low volume, because they really expect the AI engineer to cover the end-to-end. At this stage, maybe 5 years down the road, there will be a more clear distinction. Does that help?
Sunil, this is
Yes.
more of a solution architect you are talking about, right?
Yes.
There are two ways of looking at an architect: the one who designs overall solution, who basically gets into nuts and bolts of your model, right? So the way you look into that architect, from which lens it matters here.
Yes, you're right. It does. It does. So again, I go back to the phases. If you're in the engage phase, as an enterprise, as a business, you don't know the nuts and bolts, right? You will need to engage with someone who knows, who can take that total view and guide you on, okay, if this is the use case, this is the kind of solution you need, these are the elements. So the architect is expected to know what are those nuts and bolts, but the how, the actual implementation of the nuts and bolts is something that he or she may not be, they may have the skills, but that is not the role that they would perform as an architect.
These roles you are categorizing from an application development perspective, or the people who are really building the machine learning models or AI models, or who are kind of improvising the models. You are not talking from that perspective, am I right?
I am these roles, at least on what you see here, is purely based on what is out there. Now, the job description of an AI ML engineer may surely have some more than some. They will have a sizable piece of ops. They may have some elements of the architect, but this is purely, in terms of the job, in the role description, in the job titles that were posted, this is the spread. And the intent of this is more to give a sense of which areas are having, it's a relative demand on the types of roles.
Yeah, got it. Not from a research perspective. Okay, I got it. What you're trying to say.
Right? Yeah. Other
There is
questions?
one question on chat. How many of these 60,000 positions are hot and open for contracting outside of US? Or are those separate ones not listed in these numbers? So which of these 60,000 positions in US are open for contracting from outside US, or are there separate ones not listed in these numbers?
So I didn't segment it by that. This was a pure keyword-based number. In general, LinkedIn posts tend to carry more full-time roles. There are roles posted by staffing firms who are providing staff on a contract basis. But they are full-time for those staffing firms. So you could assume that most of these are full-time, but having said that, there is naturally in that engage phase, companies may be looking at bringing contract resources. Now, if it is, there are certain types of roles that can be done in a pure remote setting. But there are certain roles which will require, active engagement with the clients. And that is where the remote offshore versus onshore requirements tend to be, tend to have an impact. In general, what I've seen is if the technology is new and it's not very well established, there is a tendency to require, even if there are contract resources, to be more onshore or nearshore, because it gives it gives better access. If it's a very well defined space and scope, then it could be offshore with no at least face-to-face online engagements would be there would be a limited requirement. They are more able to be taken in a pure offshore setting. Other?
Yeah, so I have a question, Sunil.
Yeah.
The question is that when we talk about the prompt engineering, it you talked about it requires a context. That means the US has most of the context in terms of the market or whatever the needs are, and but it also requires a training of the models as per that the data available. If we
Yeah.
want to make the this like the training of the model as per the Indian data, so how to go about it? Because uh, let's say that there are so many sectors like education, pharma, which are mostly contextualized right now as per the US or maybe the European markets. But if we have to do the same thing for Indian, then how do we go about it? The training of, yeah. So that is a question.
So an assumption you're making here, and if I followed your question, an assumption you're making here is that the value of prompt engineering is primarily if it is an in-house effort. If you're doing model building and or even fine tuning, you are bringing in you're bringing in some in-house capability. That may not always need to be the case, right? Think about a simple application where you want to rely on an existing model and you're just using an API call to use that model. You may be sending some of your data, but you're not doing anything to the model, right? In that segment, just knowing the right prompts could get you almost 80 to 90% of the the task value that you want to generate. Now, if you do plan to do an in-house development on the model building, fine-tuning, deployment, maintenance, and so on, then yes, then you would need to have someone who can do the the model component, and you may end up, trying to get someone who can do the end-to-end, from prompt to model deployment and maintenance. But by its nature, prompt engineering does not predicate the need to have in-house model development.
Okay. Okay. So I mean, the question was more of in sort that if the current, let's say that Chat GPT, okay, um, if I ask the questions on Chat GPT, it will be mostly giving me the questions that it is trained as of now, you know, and as a prompt engineer, if I'm doing okay, I may be talking about the Indian context, but the training of that model has happened as per the US context. So that is what I'm trying to say, that it will take some time to get this prompt engineering and the training of the model as per the Indian context. That is what the
So I'll partially agree to that. And the reason it's partial is, again, the LLMs, and I'm not a subject matter expert, but from what I understand, the LLMs are, they're part of generating an output. You could use some of your own data to be submitted, but using that model's capability to assess and give you an output. So you're not adding to the training piece, right? A simple thing, and then this is something that is commonly done now. If you submit somebody's CV, you can get an extraction of what are the key skills, or what are some of the other attributes of the CV that you want to get a quick summary on, right? That can be done very easily using any of these LLMs. That it does not require model building or fine tuning of any form, but it does require the right prompts, right? And so that prompt requires some contextual understanding of what is the profile of the candidate and so on. So what I'm conveying here is, it doesn't necessarily require you to have your own in-house development, but it does require you to understand how these models work with the contextual knowledge of what you want to get out of them.
okay. Thank
Uh,
you.
Sunil, are we seeing a trend where people are moving beyond the support functions utilization of the AI models? Like for people, definitely will use AI for customer service, right, marketing, or for some of the HR related tasks. But are we seeing a trend where people are relying do because of the problem of hallucination that AI models have? Are we seeing a trend where people are starting to use their AI for core business services?
So they definitely want to. There are a few things, and I go back to the roadmap phases. In the evaluate phase, if your use case, let's say your use case is something that requires your business information to be used, which is proprietary. Now, for that use case, if the question is, if they ask the question, can I use AI to help me do this, which I do on a repetitive basis? And I'll use a simple example. Most companies have contracts. Can I use AI to know the pricing for a product, by feeding in some existing contracts? Now, if your data set is very small and in usage is very infrequent, then it does not make a strong business case. So the business case has to be very clear. And the elements of the business case clearly are: how frequently do I do a task? What is the data intensity needed to get a meaningful output. And if if the checkbox is yes and on both, then is this something that I am ready to use an external model, which basically means I'll submit this data to external model. And that naturally raises the privacy, confidentiality, and other questions. And then that is when you can start thinking about the engage. Now I've checkboxed everything, but I need to know how can I use this in a manner which does not compromise my business interest. You are now ready for engage. Because the engage person or the company can help you decide on what is the best approach to get to delivering on your business case or your use case.
Sure. Thanks.
So Sunil, there are some more questions on the Google Chat. If you go to Google Chat, you'll see those questions.
Okay. Can I, for some reason, maybe I should have a way to...
You can stop sharing and you will see the Google Chat.
Yeah. Let's do that. Because can I do this, Vivek?
Yeah.
I have 2 more slides.
Sure. That
If
works.
I can cover them, because that will hopefully throw a few more questions, and then I'll switch. That way I don't have to get back to the slide deck.
That works. Go for it.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So we were almost close to the end here. So these are some of the approaches to fill, these are approaches for any jobs. But because the focus here is about AI jobs, either you go through your network, your referrals. There are career pages of the companies, and then there are job portals. And we map this on a simple 2-dimensional view, right, of effectiveness and reach. And this is very intuitive, right? Network or referrals have high effectiveness, but the reach is limited. Employer pages increases your reach, but the effectiveness goes down, and job portals has the maximum reach. But just by itself has one of the lowest effectiveness. The value-added approaches is using recruiters. And why is that value-added? Essentially, the recruiter or the recruiting approach using professional companies brings you up on the effectiveness dimension without reducing the reach. So they tend to have, as good of a reach as the job portals, because they use them a lot within the recruiting space. Some are more generalized, and the generalized ones generally don't have the subject matter expertise on that specific domain. The specialized ones do, and the goal is, if we can make the effectiveness dimension to be as high as the network referrals while not reducing the reach. And so that is the goal. And this is a bit of messaging about what Cellstrat does, and we have partnered with them to help on the recruiting side, as well as doing some talent development and upskilling. And what we offer to the clients is, for the routine roles, we will be able to fulfill those requirements in a 1-month time frame, and for senior level roles, it could be as much as 3 months. So this is at least our way to say we recognize the gap, but we have the capabilities to give you some kind of a time commitment. And then if you're interested in knowing more, including as a talent, if you want to provide your profile and at least convey your skills, this is the express part. of the roadmap, you can go to this website. It's recruitment with an AI. So that's the way, if you want to remember it. It's simple recruitment with a misspelling you'll see, which is the AI coming in between. So now I'll stop, and then hopefully then I can see all of the questions. Okay. So let's see. I see some hands. Oh, there it is in the chat box. Okay. Okay. What I'm going to do in the interest of time, I'll take the questions which are more general in nature, right? And if you have specific questions, specific to your requirements or your situation, we can take that offline, and I'll send you some contact details for you to reach to us. Is that okay? Okay, because I'm just sensitive to, we have 5 more minutes. Okay, how many of these 60K positions are hot and open for contract? Okay, I think we answered that. Do you have a gauge into salary distribution across these open positions, both in US and in India? So I would say, the salary range, again, it comes down to the skill level required, but you can expect starting numbers to be in the, again, for very low amount of experience and, common skills. This could be in the teens, CTC lakhs, and higher, right? The upper end can go into the 30s or potentially, or maybe even 40s. But the starting point would be in the teens in India. And in the US, I'll just give again, if it is an onshore resource, it could be in 6 figures in the US. For 25 years in tech solution provider, okay, I'll put anything which is specific to an individual's profile. If I could request that to be offline, that will help to give more general. Okay, yeah, I will share my phone number and email. Okay. Okay, so please put the live slide. I think you're talking about the, okay, good. Vivek, you've already posted that. That's helpful. Okay, so I'm going to request those 2 specific questions. If you can, I'll post my email here. I'm just going to do it right now. And I will also give my number. Okay, so if you could, just in the interest of benefiting everyone, if there is any other general question, you can bring it up. We have a couple more minutes.
Sunil, actually, if you want to be an individual contributor for a business or a product, how to approach them, like how to make them comfortable.
Sorry, can you repeat that question, please?
If you want to be an individual contributor in developing the model or helping a business or any product, like how to approach them and how do they, and the data is maybe sensitive or something like that. So how to make them comfortable that we can develop the model and help you them.
So I'm going to refer again to the roadmap. Again, as a general thought process, try to do a very pragmatic assessment of where you are and where you want to be, right? So if you are in the early stages, are you in the educate space? And naturally, then depending on where you want to be, what kind of education will be most relevant? And education doesn't always mean, going to a degree program or something. A lot of the things that this community is doing is part of education and enhancement. Then, please, I would encourage everyone to think in terms of how do I translate this into outcomes? And they may not be something relating to your job, but you need to have at least a good way to articulate these were some of the outcomes I was able to get through the implementation of what I learned. That piece is I cannot overemphasize the need for that, and that is something that we generally see not done very well in CVs. The CVs will typically have a lot of listing of the tools, and some of these tools are used in a college course or in some other ways, but the application of what you learned from these tools is something that does not come out very readily. And that is something I would encourage you to think through. If you can apply and then express it really well, then you are better positioned for the roles that you want. I think we are out of time, so I want to thank you all for your time and interest and good questions. And Vivek, thank you for giving me the opportunity to present to this large and very skilled and accomplished group. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunil. Excellent presentation. Thank you, audience, for joining. Very interesting thoughts around talent and recruiting. Thanks, Sunil.